Forbes India and Legrand present Data Driven World.
Hello and welcome to Forbes India and Legrand Presents Data Driven World. My name is Manu Balachandran and I hope all of you are safe and doing well. Now, the adoption of cloud and digital transformation has not only picked up pace amongst Indian businesses, the government of India has also taken up many digitization initiatives under the umbrella of building a digital India. This has resulted in an increasing demand for data centers, which is expected to grow exponentially as more government programs such as government to citizen, delivery platforms, national e commerce setups, e visa, and national CSR initiatives are rolled out across the country. Additionally, the implementation of 5G networks and IoT adoption and the granting of infrastructure status to data center industry is likely to see the demand reaching feverish pitch in the next few years. The Indian data center market is growing at some 11.4%, and this demand will continue to increase, also driven by surges in cloud adoption, digital transformation, and social media usage, as well as new Industry 4.0 technologies like 5G, AI, and the Internet of Things. It's against this backdrop that Forbes India and Legrand Data Center Solutions host this special webinar that will provide an insightful outlook on how the government sector can benefit by laying out a long-term strategy for data center infrastructure growth. Our guests will discuss how Digital India is also enabling a data center ecosystem. We joined this afternoon by Mr. Sharat Sahai Mathur, GM, Center for Railway Information and Systems, CRIS. We have Dr. Prashant Atrey, HoD IT&C, NHPC. Mr. Golok Kumar Simli, Principal Advisor and CTO, Passport Seva Programme at the Ministry of External Affairs. And lastly, Mr. Sanjay Motwani, Country Head, Legrand Data Center Solutions. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me this afternoon. Now, Sanjay, let me start today's discussion with you. India is witnessing a surge in the demand for transformation of its first generation e-governance services that, of course, harness the power of newer technologies such as cloud, big data, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and analytics. What factors are driving this demand, according to you?
Thank you for having me here. There are two factors which I believe are driving this demand. One, obviously, is the consumer, and the second is the government. From the consumer side, I believe that today's consumer has become what I call the click-happy, demanding consumer. The consumer today wants everything here and now, be it services, be it entertainment, be it information, etc. But everything has to be available, at the drop of a click, for lack of any other phrase. If I go back, if I go back in early 90s when, email was being introduced in India and I was working for an organization trying to sell email, it would take us months to try and sell an email to customers. Today, the situation has reversed where organizations are trying to play catch up with the consumers' demand as to what the consumers are wanting here and now. So that's the consumer side, where the consumer are being more demanding and trying to want and more of the internet connectivity, etc., and therefore generating a lot of data. On the other side, it's the government. I mean, obviously, the government's Digital India initiatives, and under that, you've got tons of activities which have been rolled out: smart cities, e-commerce, the ONDC side, the digital payments, etc., citizen services, and a couple of days back, the crypto rupee, the digital rupee is also being announced. So obviously, all this is playing a lot in terms of driving the data and its generation, and therefore the need for the excessive amount of data centers. So these two, I believe, consumers and the government initiatives.
Fascinating. Mr. Golok, government to citizen services, of course, span education, healthcare, agriculture, identity, and payments. So how are data centers, according to you, enabling a digital India?
No, absolutely. Thank you for having me here. Let me also greet all my co-panelists who have joined this panel. To come about the data-driven decisions and the kind of predictions we are taking in the government system at large, I personally foresee there are 3-4 directions why the data centers, especially the hyperscaler data centers, are so important for us. The one very particular aspect what we are observing is today, if you see, we are trying to deliver all the services nearest to the user, wherever the user is, especially at the remotest part of the country or kind of a right at the village level. And when I see that particular shift, what we are observing today, the another no kind of a concept we are seeing, it is no more. I always say that it is from compute is, or the data is all the way traveling to the compute. It is
Hmm.
also the other way. The how is the compute traveling towards the data wherever the consumer is, wherever the citizen is, right? So that is one of the shift we are observing heavily. The second aspect of the the data center is more or less after the COVID scenario, we all have witnessed that the kind of demand and the expectations, both in terms of wherever I am, whichever device I want to access these kind of a government services, it is 24 by 7. And going forward, what we are also realizing, there is no more kind of a 24 kind of a 7 office, or let's say 9 by 5 kind of a office. Today if you ask me, virtually we have gone ahead, boundaryless. There is no more kind of a corporate data center, corporate application, corporate network. And that's why the variance in the data center, what we are observing is from on-prem towards the cloud. And
Hmm.
even if when we are moving towards the cloud, again there are two major aspects what government is looking into. How do we migrate our workload into the cloud? And when we are migrating our workload, do we really understand, or do we really have a data strategy in place? And therefore, if you ask, the data, critical data like passport or any of these on the cloud variance data center is hybrid approach. And I personally feel for some time going forward, this coexistence will remain on-prem plus no cloud, and it will be kind of a physical plus digital. It will also be kind of a, if I look into the industry side of this, there there will be a kind of a close collaboration between government and industry, while we will be evolving this kind of a business model per se, or this kind of a interfaces between government and users, and government and business. So these are the shifts we are observing as far as data centers are concerned. That's my first take. Thank you.
But just a follow-up question, with regards to COVID, how did that sort of change the mindset within the government ecosystem? Your
Oh, very, very good question. Very pertinent. If you ask me, there are no kind of a the cultural shift which we have observed in terms of having also having to establish a kind of a digital ecosystem at large. When I say ecosystem, it is not about only the ministry, it is among the stakeholders, and also how does the users and how does citizen understand us when we are developing that ecosystem. And therefore there it is very important we all to understand, whether I am from government, you from media side, or someone from industry, saying that what is the users and citizen expectation from us. The two things, one is the demand, and second is the democratization. I always say that, saying that how do you meet the demand in a democratized way, right? And going forward, we are also observing, saying that the workload and workforce, the phenomena is both of them become deal with these two things, the mobility concept and demand along with democratization. I think that is the way forward I foresee when we talk about these data centers. That's how I put it.
right.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Let me bring in Mr. Sharat here. Mr. Sharat, with over 8,000 stations spread across its vast network, Indian Railways continuously strive to enhance the passenger experience with, of course, the state-of-art amenities backed by technology-powered service offerings. Now, how are you transferring the ecosystem to you?
Thanks for having me here, and nice question, good question that you asked me. Um, yes, as you say, Indian Railways, of course, has got a large number of customers, and we cater to almost the entire population of the country. How we cater to the entire population is not just as passengers. We have, of course, very large number of passengers. You've heard all that. One Australia traveling every day by Indian Railways. But we also have freight customers, and the freight that we carry, for example, 50% of our freight is coal, and we carry coal, we carry steel, cement. We also carry some higher value consignments. The the freight that we carry actually is what touches everyone's lives, because the coal that we carry normally serves to power thermal power stations, and electricity touches everyone's life. So it is true that railways touches everyone's life in one way or the other every day of the year. So as Mr. Golok Simli also has said, the customer is getting very demanding. In our case, the passenger is much more demanding in terms of information that he or she needs. There were days just a few years back when people would wait for hours at the station on the platforms. No longer. People have mobile phones. They expect to get information about their journeys on their mobile phones, on their desktop systems. So in essence, what we are doing now is we are looking at the entire life cycle of the passenger journey. So there is a journey life cycle. It starts when a passenger starts thinking about his travel, and it goes through his deciding on the train that he needs to use, whether he needs to use the train at all or whether he can go by road or by air. So first he makes that modal decision, then he looks at the services that are available, finds the service that is most important or most relevant for him. Then he would like to buy a ticket. If he's waitlisted, he wants to have information about when his ticket is confirmed. And once he has a ticket, then he's worried about, he or she, I use the generic he is worried about when the train is going to reach his station, his boarding point. Once he reaches the station, he wants to know where to go. He needs to have that information. Once he's at the right platform, he wants to know where his coach will come. Once he's on the coach, he wants to know how much time the train is going to take, whether it is delayed or not. When he has reached before his destination, he needs a warning that yes, your destination is going to come. Please prepare to deboard. Once he deboards at the station, he wants to know how to get out of that station. So as you can see, across that journey life cycle, his information needs are constant and they are changing. And that is what we want to address. So there is a lot of information that is moving to the passenger. And he needs the same information on his mobile phone, and he needs the same information on his on the station display boards, on the display boards inside the coaches, on the at the platform, the coach location markers. So all of this information has to be consistent. This is consistent information. So there is a lot of compute that is going on in the background. As I said, this is not only restricted to passengers as our customers. We have freight customers also. The same thing goes for the freight customers' consignment life cycle. At one point of time, people were content. Once they booked their consignment on the train, they'd wait for a month for it to reach its destination. But that is no longer possible, because nowadays our wagon turnaround is around 5.5 days. That means that from one loading to another, it takes only 5.5 days. So journeys are 2 to 3 days maximum. So now your consigner and consignee, they want to know when their consignment is going to reach. And these are heavy consignments. Normally they are rake loads. So unloading is an activity in itself. So that whole freight ecosystem is now a logistics ecosystem countrywide. And there are partners involved. Now, it is not just that a person will come and book a consignment with us. There are partners involved. There are third-party logistics service providers. There are, if it's an export or import consignment, there are customs is involved, ports are involved. So there are a lot of partners involved, and that is creating a whole logistics mesh in the country. So the second requirement now is interchanging information among all these partners, which entails the use of, for example, we have put in place an API gateway right now, an application programming interface gateway. So we interchange information with our partners through the API gateway. And we are already doing 1 crore data exchanges every month through that gateway. So there are 1 crore transactions that are happening through that gateway monthly, but it is just the beginning. Again, the point is that there's a lot of data moving through the system. The third aspect that I'd like to highlight is the need now for IoT or cyber physical systems. Also, Mr. Simli, Golok Simli also touched upon that. That is automated data collection from various parts of the organization. For example, our rolling stock, our wagons, locomotives, and coaches, we capture data directly from them for maintenance purposes. How is this vehicle behaving? Is there likely to be a maintenance issue coming up? Do we need to take it for maintenance? Previously, it used to be time bound. Now it is more condition bound, and we are putting in right now we are in the initial stages of putting these gizmos in this equipment, the sensors and the actuators that will help us to capture data automatically and act on it. But it is creating large streams of data. So where do you manage that data? What the trend is to move all the IT applications centrally. But when you get this IoT data coming in, then you have the need for edge data centers. You need to do a lot of processing at the edge. Very, very good thing, I mean, very interesting thing that Golok said was compute traveling to the data. So this is exactly, your sensors are compute traveling to the data. You capture the data there, you do some processing, move it to an edge, do more processing, aggregate it, then only move it to the central data center, central facility where you do further processing. So these are things that are coming in. We have a real-time train tracking system, real-time train information system. We have this Raksha Kavach, you must have heard of Kavach, which is a safety management system. All of them generate a lot of data and consume a lot of data. Then central repositories, we have e-offices, but we also need to capture a lot of the engineering information centrally. We have drawings of different vehicles, rolling stock, fixed infrastructure. We have bridges, we have overhead electrification equipment, we have tracks. All of those generate a lot of engineering data that has to be centrally kept and then accessed whenever you need to manage or maintain those. So then we have geospatial data. I mean, the list goes on and on. We have a GIS system in place, so there's a lot of data coming in. We need analytics just to manage all the, because we want to do a lot of data-driven decision making. So all this data goes into these analytics systems. Again, we right now have 100 use cases that we have generated, but there are probably many, many more.
Absolutely.
So the need for central processing, the need for edge processing, and with the coming of the cloud, what loads will we put on third-party cloud service providers? What loads will we keep with us? Do we follow hybrid strategy? And how do we migrate out of our conventional applications and conventional data centers of our own? We have our own data centers, but the long-term trend definitely is to move towards a hybrid system where much of the load goes to the cloud service providers. And
Absolutely.
many of
I
those
think
services that are available, we use.
absolutely a lot of phenomenal work, and I think we want to sort of explore that a little more. But let me bring in Dr. Prashant Atrey here. Dr. Atrey, how is NHPC leveraging AI to sort of analyze the cyber behavior of users and, of course, identify potential risks here?
Good afternoon, everybody. In fact, first let me introduce my organization. NHPC is the largest hydropower producing organization, which is green and clean energy. With the increase in the renewable energy in form of solar and wind, the importance with regards to hydropower has gone really up, because to provide the stability, you have got no other means other than the hydropower. So as per our business requirements. In fact, more and more projects have come in, and we have got an aggressive target of generating 13,000 megawatt by 2024 and 50,000 megawatt by 2047. So our entire business plans are now focused on IT infrastructure because more and more support of IT is required. So I will answer your question. And NHPC has been the oldest user, I think, of IT systems. 1987, we had this VAX VMS mainframe computers, and we started using our engineering applications, finance, HR, and thereafter the things grew. There were no communication in the beginning, which started because we were having remote locations, and the communication started with our VSATs. And thereafter, slowly, then we switched on to MPLS networks, and slowly, the requirements of local data centers came in because at that time there was no cloud, and we maintained our local computer centers. They were known as computer centers rather than data centers. And slowly, we also built up our own data center at our NHPC office in Faridabad, and we had one remote site in our Calcutta office. Now, with the basically introduction of more and more uh, centralized computing and taking care of more than 43, 44 locations, because we are not a consumer based, indirectly we are helping the consumer in generation. So we are more focused on our power stations, our construction projects. So whenever this requirement comes, you are talking about the leveraging the AI. So as such, right now AI systems are not in place, but we are definitely using our other type of systems to bring in the to take care of our dashboards, to take care of our management information systems. But recently, our management has taken a big decision to go further for a new IT roadmap, and very soon we are going to adopt so many things. First of all, in fact, we are using ERP systems since 2006 or 7, and many of our systems now require more functionalities. So we are going for new age ERP, and we have taken a decision to go for SaaS based solution. Definitely, it is going to be cloud based. Now, when the cloud comes, the main thing comes regarding the cybersecurity aspects. And as a organization, my previous speaker has already told that when we go for this cyber and physical type of systems, then we have to be very careful in regard to automation. Now there comes the role of AI, how we analyze the user behavior, in what way we can take care of our attacks on OT system. And as per our guidelines, we have to segregate our IT, internet facing IT system with the OT systems. The SCADA systems are not to be linked in any way. We need to have some devices, something more than firewall to address this issue. Because once we automate, because automation is definitely affected by the new threat actors. As we can see names what has happened, but OT systems, US pipeline attack was there. So we are getting more vigilant in this aspect, and we need something more than firewalls to do it. So AI right now we are not adopting, but we have already gone in for our new tenders. Very soon they will be out. So we will be using AI and BI for our both business decisions as well as the dashboards or management level decisions.
Interesting.
If you
Mr. Golok here, what are the key elements of building a robust e-governance data center?
Very pertinent. I think, let me put this way, saying that, no, when you look for this kind of a big, no, platform, digital platform, especially the data center part, I think we need to, now it is high time that understand in terms of what kind of data I am generating and what kind of data I am collecting or what kind of data I am dealing. Let me give an example. For an example, in my passport Seva issuance system alone, I have almost 15 terabyte of metadata. I am crossing more than 700 terabyte of almost document and other repository. And then I have also no image and biometric data. Now, if I take you to the metadata part alone, I have both type of data, the personal data and non-personal data. Now, I need to understand what kind of data I am dealing. Is it a personal data? If it is a personal data, how much security and privacy concern attached to this particular personal data? How much of this data I am using for the purpose for which I have collected from the citizens? How much of that data set I am using as a secondary use? For an example, let's say I am sharing that data sets to my Bureau of Immigration or any of the intelligence agencies. So we have to have a data strategy in place. And when I say that we have to have a data strategy in place, I look into four directions. These four directions are, first and foremost thing is the people direction. Now, in terms of people, in terms of access and authorization, in terms of no, as I said, no personal and non-personal data, in terms of who is the owner of the data, who is the custodian of the data, who is the first primary user of the data, who is the secondary user of the data. So I must have my people concept very clear, right? The second part is the execution model. What kind of execution model I have adapted? Is it my on-prem model? Is it a cloud variance hybrid approach model? Is it a centralized model? Is it a federated model? So that has to be very clear. No, that is the second aspect when I'm dealing with this kind of data at large, platform at large, data center at large. The third aspect is the rules of engagement. When I say rules of engagement, in terms of compliances, in terms of regulations, in terms of available land of the laws, how much I am into it. Tomorrow, if something happens, some of our panel speakers were talking about the AIMS example. So what do I do if I get into that kind of a problem? Is my rules, regulations, the risk management aspect, the backup concept, the BCP in place. So the rules of engagement have to be very clear and crisp. The last quarter is I say the tools and technologies. Now let me quote another example here. For an example, let's say I am migrating some of my workload, which I have already done when I'm talking to all my global embassies and consulate. Some of the cloud variance concept I have taken into account. Now I'm very clear saying that when I'm taking the cloud approach, what is the data set I'm keeping into the cloud? And also I'm very clear that I'm not anyway violating the land of the laws in terms of moving my application and database layer out of the country, right? That I'm very clear of, right? So when I'm taking this approach, can I create that visibility, observability, and traceability end to end? And I always saying that when I'm dealing with this kind of a cloud variance data center or data centers, and I'm dealing with this kind of various data sets, what is my security concept I have taken into consideration? For an example, in my case, I have taken care of security by design principle. I have taken care of security intrinsic to each layer of my ecosystem at large, digital ecosystem at large. And when it comes to the privacy part of it, I think all of we now understand saying that the data being collected today, it is not the sole purpose for which we are using that data sets, but most of the time we are also using a secondary use of the data sets. And that is why you will see that going forward, what we will realize more and more, it will not be the custodian and the primary owner of the data or the primary user of the data which will be accounted for, but it will be equally important to make the secondary user of the data accountable in that privacy framework, right? So that is the another thing we'll realize. The last thing I must say, I think ICT, when we say ICT, I don't think ICT will be mere kind of a information and communication technology going forward. If I look the bigger ecosystem at large, whether in India or globally too, I think ICT is taking another form of it, and which every one of us must imbibe that ICT. When I say that ICT, it is moving away from information and communication technology to ICT, to innovation, collaboration, and transformation. If we can imbibe that factor of ICT into the previous part of ICT, I think that is the game changer which we will realize in the going forward. That's how I put it. Thank you.
Just a quick follow up. How soon can we see e-passports or paperless passports?
No, let me first clear that no misnomer saying that when it e-passport, your booklet remains the same. That will not be paperless per se. When I say e-passport, there will be a RFID chip tagged into your last page of the cover. That RFID chip, the RFID chip will carry your demographic and biometric data, but that booklet will remain. The only difference is when you have your e-passport in place, there are two advantages. One is you will have a quicker migration, I mean immigration. The second is your data will have second level of assurance in terms of data protection and data security. And third is globally too, the global scenario, if I tell you globally too, whenever you travel, let's say you are out of the country, the validation and verification becomes easy, because I'll not only able to verify your the physical data sets which is visible to me, or let's say on the emergent zone, but I'll have another level of security in the form of RFID chip. So I'll be exactly knowing who the person is, or who is standing near me or at immigration counter. And we are working on that, and I am sure, I think uh, definitely in and around next financial year we are targeting to go live. Yeah.
Definitely looking forward to that. Let me just bring in Mr. Sharat
Thank
here. Just the same question that I threw to Mr. Golok here. To you, what are the key elements of building a robust, e-governance data center?
Okay. Yes, I mean, some of the points that Mr. Simli made, uh, very interesting and very well put. And I noted many of them down. They really they give you a lot of food for thought. As far as the infrastructure for IT systems is concerned, is as I said, we have been, had been moving towards building larger data centers because we had been centralizing our IT systems. We had decentralized systems initially for a long time, although railways again has been, like NHPC has been one of the older users of IT. In fact, we bought our first systems in 1967, and those were naturally decentralized and computer centers kind of things. Then in 1986 is when we really got into these centralized applications, starting with the passenger reservation system. Physically, it is distributed into four server centers, but conceptually all these things are centralized applications, and now they are moving to the central data center also, because that is the that is the natural evolution of the conventional IT systems that we used to have. But in the meantime, now we have the cloud. So the cloud is a disruptor, and the cloud, we are building our own private cloud. We have a small private cloud in CRIS. We also have the rail cloud that is developed by Railtel Corporation, which is there. So we have clouds, but again, if you have a private cloud, you find that orchestration and all is difficult to do. There's a lot of technological density in building a private cloud. And public clouds have got many services now available. They have matured a lot, especially these big three, and also the Indian cloud service providers. We are in touch with a couple of those also. So there you have to be very aware of the services that are made available by the CSPs, by the cloud service providers. If you are not, you must, you hear many times that the public cloud turns out to be more expensive than budgeted for,
Right.
and it is more expensive than having your own private facilities. But after our experience, what I understand is, what I have realized and what we have all realized is that unless you are fully familiar with the services that the CSPs are offering, you can't get the benefit of those services, full services, and you'll end up spending more money than you have budgeted for. So a good understanding of those services is required. In the meantime, of course, you do need your own facilities, and there are, you need, for example, a tier three facility, a tier three data center is the bare minimum that you can go for as far as the uptime and resilience of the data center is concerned. So definitely, we have gone and also we've developed our own tier three data centers to tier three standards, and the disaster recovery part or the business continuity aspect is very, very important. So you need to have a geographically remote DR center, and not just the DR center, it is the DR system that you have to put into place. So all your applications have to have DR centers. You have to be able to do a risk assessment to find out what you can afford in terms of business continuity. You can end up spending a bomb, but you have to see what is the appropriate level that you need.
Right.
Another important thing that Mr. Golok Simli touched upon, which is very important, is data governance. Now, when you start putting these systems in place and you start doing your analysis of the data, you realize that unless you have a proper solid data governance system in place, you will not be able to get the right result from your data analysis. So you start taking a data centric view, and the data centric view, as he also explained, is a lot about the semantics of the data, and then the how you the what they call the anyway, how you store the data. So
Right.
so the data aspect itself is also very important. But yes,
Absolutely.
a hybrid data center, as far as data centers go, a hybrid data center strategy is inescapable right now.
Absolutely. Let me bring in Dr. Atrey here. Dr. Atrey, data localization, of course, may entail greater investments in terms of time, cost, and new infrastructure. What are your observations on the evolving scenario?
In fact, in my first part, I have already covered this thing that we started with data localization only, and still
Hmm.
we are having that aspect with us. But one
Hmm.
thing that we have experienced, and based on experience, we will say that the more localization is there, we need to invest more. And the way
Hmm.
the technology is improving, the cyber security threats are coming. So we need to invest more and more money into this. In addition, we need the resources as well, the trained manpower. And in the government sector, what is happening? The manpower is reducing day by day, and the focus is more on the outsourcing part. Then, when we go for the capex, we need to plan our budget. We need to take the approvals accordingly. We have to justify, and the procurement cycle is again there. And when we go for procurement cycle, one thing, Make in India is there. So it is a very practical aspect. And nowadays, we cannot, as a government organization, we need to procure through GEM, and in GEM, most of the items are not there.
Hmm. Hmm.
Then once we see the uptime part, I have a local data center here, and it is very difficult to provide 24 by 7 availability most of the time because we cannot put the people on shift. We have got lesser manpower. So whenever the alert comes, the person comes from his house and opens it because a practical part. So slowly, what we decided, we shifted our things into a data center owned by BSNL, Faridabad and Nixie, where we hired the racks. Our servers are there, our own servers. So then you have to manage their AMCs, warranties, and at the end of the life you have to replace them. So when we thought of this changing of our IT roadmap, we draw a cost economics curve, and we found that in any case the availability of the things on cloud is on lesser side. Maybe at some point of time, suppose after 5 6 years when you have to change the hardware, just before that the cost curve may be on higher side, but once we put in again the fresh hardware, the cost will again increase. So from that perspective, we thought that let us have our new ERP, what we are planning, on cloud. And most of the things right now, we have recently launched an early warning system. I would just like to brief that as well. In last year, February, there was a incident in Tapovan, wherein a project of NTPC, lot of damages happened due to lot of lives were. So our ministry, our honorable power minister decided that let us make the early warning systems for our disaster warning. So NHPC was given the responsibility and we established that system. That is again a cloud-based system because entire computing was in cloud. Definitely it is a mighty approved. All features we have seen, all security aspects we have taken, and whatever guidelines are being issued from MIT side or our ministry side, we have taken care. So that is the one system which is fully running, and now we'll be coming on that. But cloud is definitely having some challenges as well regarding the availability. But that depends upon how you sign the SLAs with your service provider. Because now we have thought of having 99.97% availability on cloud, and they are ready to provide that. They say that we will be giving you 6 backups. And being a government organization, we have gone for hybrid. One backup will also keep at our data center. Then latency part is to be seen, and definitely cyber security. They have promised that whatever guidelines are being issued by MIT, they will be taking care of that. So keeping those aspects in mind, I feel that there is now a time has come that one should switch over to the cloud, and based upon our experience we are doing it. But definitely it will be hybrid, not 100%, because there are certain applications which are specific to my organization, say for board meetings. So many other applications I would not like to discuss over here. So we would like to keep in our place, and definitely cloud is a better option as of now.
Absolutely. Sanjay, let me bring you back here. It's expected that investments in the Indian data center markets are going to hit the, high growth rate in the APAC region, especially after China. And it's, of course, expected to reach some $4.6 billion by 2025. What is your outlook for the industry, and what are the challenges sort of, as we go forward?
See, outlook is very positive. I mean, I don't want to get into numbers, whether it's 4.5, 4.6, or 5 or 6 billion. The reality is that the snowball is there. It's rolling, and it's going to roll faster and become larger and larger. So, I mean, without putting a number onto it, all I'm saying is it's big and very big. That's one part of the question. The second part of the question you're referring to is about the challenges. Now, a lot has been spoken about security, data protection, personal data, etc., etc. So those continue, and they will continue to be there. But according to me, I think the pace at which we are growing and the pace at which the number of data centers are coming in, I think the larger issue for me, the way I view it, is growing without carbonizing. Sustainable development of data centers. That's very critical for me. I mean, we will grow the way we are growing, and we will suddenly realize, oops, there's too much of carbon footprint coming into play. Data centers by design are not environmentally friendly. So for me, doing that and putting in policies and rules and regulations where sustainability metrics or environmental metrics or operational efficiency metrics of data centers should become critical in terms of how we move forward. I mean, given the fact that now we are chairing the G20 also, where sustainability is huge, I think we should, set an example as far as data centers operational efficiencies are concerned, and trying to ensure that we are growing without carbonization on this. So I think that would be a bigger challenge for me, though the biggest challenge in the years to come.
Just a follow-up question, how do you sort of build then sustainable, data centers?
Okay, so I can, let's take the example of Singapore. Singapore 3 years ago put a moratorium for 2 years on data centers being built. They insisted that the existing data centers occupancy be optimized. So they went up from 64% to about 94-95% in the beginning of this year. And this year they've set up a tender which says that only 30 megawatts of data centers would be allowed next year. Whether it's 4, 5, 6, or 7, that's to be seen. But the operational efficiency has to be 1.3 of PUE and lower. Now they're looking at technologies. They are looking at various methodologies. They're looking at alternative energy. So the point I was continuing from the point I was making before is we should not reach the level where Singapore reached, where they had to pull the plug and put in brakes. Okay, this is one example which Singapore is doing. There would be other ways of doing it. I mean, you'll have to put in guidelines and say, hey, this is the operational efficiency, not only in terms of consumption of power, but also optimal utilization of space. At the end of the day, everything is correlated and linked, etc., and it kind of snowballs further and further. So, I mean, we'll have to put our heads together and do it very fast.
Absolutely. We're sort of running short on time, so we're going to start taking the audience questions. So the first question that's come from Nandita is, how can data centers build a local public cloud service in a competitive market? I don't know. Does anybody want to take it, or does Sanjay want to sort of answer that?
I'm not sure if I understand the question, or somebody else is ready to answer, please.
No,
Anybody?
Sanjay ji, please go ahead, or otherwise I'll take up. No problem.
You please take up. I mean, let me try and get the hang of the question
No,
first.
if I
Thank you.
get the question correctly, I think when we talk about local public cloud, I think we are talking about the edge computing side. But what I foresee is, as I said, the way we are moving from, let's say, automation toward hyper automation. I think what we need is the hyperscaler, especially in the government sector. If I say, I think it's high time that now we need to think on a collaborative way. When I say collaborative way, I think government is already working on government community cloud kind of a concept. The second is, no, the more and more we move towards hyper automation, I think the hybrid will play a bigger role, because knowing the sensitivity and criticality of the data sets we have, I think we'll take time to understand ourselves. We take time to understand the data strategy at large, and that's why the migration path will always be a hybrid way. Two more thing, whether I look for a local kind of a public cloud, or let's say hyperscaler kind of a scenario, two more factors which will play a big role on the data center arena is, which I always say, 4S. That is, how do I ensure my speed, scale, security, and sustainability? Sustainability is the big question mark. We need to evolve more and more new business model, industry oriented, industry participated business model. And when I move my workload into this kind of a, whether it is a hyperscaler or public cloud, or let's say GCC cloud, I look into 5W factor. That is, how do I deal with my workload? How do I deal with my workforce? How do I deal with my workflow? That is the application. How do I deal with my web content and web? And how do I deal with my workspace, especially after COVID-19? If these are the things I think we take care, uh, it doesn't matter whether it is a edge computing data center, whether it is a local kind of a public cloud, or if I'm talking about GCC or hyperscaler. So that's how I put it. Thank you.
Fascinating point on news. Yes, please go ahead, Sanjay.
Okay, so I think the way I've understood the question is, how is this public cloud going to be competitive in its marketplace? I think the person who's asked this question is trying to be competitive and offer services which are competitive to its customers. My thought process would be, do not go and try and sell on price, because that's only going to, there is a bottom line beyond which you cannot drop your price further. I think the idea is to focus on services and offer quality and value to your customers, by which the customers are ready to pay for the services which you offer. And if the services are good and the customers see value, they will pay for it. So, I mean, that's the way I understood the question, and I hope I'm answering it accordingly.
I sincerely hope she's understood the answers. Now,
In my view, in fact, it depends upon the case-to-case basis. As we speak, instead of being too descriptive about this, it is a case-to-case basis. If they want to market their cloud, so each organization has their own limitations and own requirements. So it is to be dealt accordingly. We cannot make a general statement in this regard. Thank you.
Understood. Right. We have one more question that's come from Mr. Raj. How to develop monetization strategy for data centers? Would Mr. Sharat want to take that up first?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, monetization strategy for data centers, actually, you will be selling services in a data center. But I assume that it also means monetizing the data per se
Hmm.
that an organization has. So that is an involved thing. You have to be careful of privacy concerns when you're looking at monetizing of the data.
Uh,
If you are looking at offering services in a data center, then of course, as the previous speakers have also mentioned, it is if you provide, you have to look at the services. You can't look just at the cost of what you are offering from a data center, and you have to perhaps offer some differentiated services that will allow you to monetize your facilities effectively.
Interesting. Anybody else has a point to make on that? On how do you develop a monetization strategy for data centers?
in fact,
No,
as I
I
see,
thought, uh, sorry, if you are taking, yeah, go ahead, please.
so in fact, monetization generally linked in government, as I can see, is linked with the revenue which is to be generated from unutilized assets.
Hmm.
So monetization is not the correct word for our data centers because they are the things which are newly being launched, and those assets are now getting utilized. So railway land that was being considered for monetization. So this word I don't feel ki it is correct word for this question.
Okay. Mr. Golok,
I
you were
think
saying something?
yeah, I also put it on the same way. I think government, we more than tangible benefit. I think for us, it is public service. It is intangible gain. It is all about bringing people at par with the no developmental goal of the nation. The kind of a literate and illiterate masses, the kind of demography and geography. So there are various facets of it. It's very difficult to directly link into a tangible kind of a gain and tangible benefit. That's how I put it.
Right.
Thank you.
We have time for one last question, and then we'll move to closing comments from all of you gentlemen. This question has come from Mihir. Do you think as the need for more cloud-based services continue to grow with time, a portion of the market will start looking towards more easily accessible localized data centers? I think he has a point there. Anybody would like to take that?
Well,
Uh,
if I may take this initial thing, of course, cloud-based services will definitely. I feel that that is the way that most of the computing needs will be addressed in future through
Hmm.
cloud-based services as they become more and more extensive and people learn how to use them. There might be a market for localized data centers to offer certain services, and those may be only at the edge. As as I can see, more and more services will be required for these automation IoT type of requirements. But also, if 5G comes, then 5G has a very large software component just to keep the 5G running. 5G is a very software intensive kind of a technology. So there also you will need to put in, you'll have to have these edge data centers, edge computing facilities. And as the other speakers have also mentioned that, especially Dr. Atrey has been saying that, is that the security component for these OT kind of systems is very, very different from the normal IT security. And normal IT security is much more evolved. These edge, the system that will be accessing edge computing facilities are much less, um, much more prone to security incidents. So they are much less secure to that extent. And there, perhaps the facilities required will have a big component of keeping the data and the system secure. So I do see that specialized data centers would be required at the edge of the network. I can see
Right.
that also coming.
Absolutely. I think we are sort of running really short on time, so we'll start taking closing comments from all of you gentlemen. We'll start with Dr. Atrey, on where you see the sort of the data center industry going forward, and also your closing comments on how the government sector can really benefit by laying out a long-term strategy for data center infrastructure in the country.
Based upon my experience, I've just earlier mentioned that we have to, the way the manpower is reducing, outsourcing is increasing. So if we invest more and more on this, our equipment, because, and again, the strategy of the government that we should be make in India, and many of the products for government sector, we are unable to purchase because most of the product are not that much uh, secured, or those things are whatever we require are not there. So immediately to take care of our VMs or to take care of our data storage, so we need to go for these cloud services. And one thing is very clear: the cloud services are not only provided by the private people. As a government organization, if we see, we go, we take help of BSNL, we take help of Nixie, Railtel is there. So those centers can also be looked for, because there is one component of, always a component of security in the government sector, whether a mighty approved cloud may be provided by a private as well. So what I feel that at least in government, this is the one thing that is driving us to opt for the clouds. But definitely hybrid structure will be there. We will be keeping our own data somewhere safe in the form of backup as well. But to
Right.
get the quick services, we need to go for cloud.
Right. Mr. Sharat, your closing comments?
Of course, I'll only talk about one aspect that I feel is very important, and that Dr. Atrey also has said, is that skill building in the government is very, very important now. There was, it has happened in spurts, in waves, actually, if you see. So at one point of time, the skills were more towards development of applications using modern development tools, and those skills have been absorbed by the government to a large extent. But now the skills required are in terms of governing the systems, especially data, where we don't have much, we have not been thinking about data as a separate layer that pervades all your IT systems. So data itself has its own relations, and it is ultimately the data that you have is modeling some real world objects. So that is something that people are not very skilled about. They don't know how to manage data. Mr. Golok Simli has told us many aspects of data governance. So
Right.
that is one aspect of it. And the second is building skills in the area of cloud enabling, understanding what services are offered by public cloud service providers, and how you can build a cloud rather than just virtualized, infrastructure layer. But how do you do that orchestration? That is the real skill. So that skill building is very, very important. I think that should be taken up in a big way in government. That is the
Right.
way forward, really.
Right. Mr. Golok, what are your parting thoughts? And also, just some sort of light on, the government granting an infrastructure status. So what happens as a result of that?
I think my experience goes little bit, I'll put this way, saying that I think we have to come out from a mindset of saying that no, I can deliver if I am in government or something kind of that. I think we need to collaborate more. We need to develop more business model, industry oriented approach. The idea is, whether I am in government, you are in industry, it is all about how do you secure the data yourself, how do you secure yourself. And the way things are evolving, I really foresee a bright future way forward, because the kind of digital identity system we have, like Aadhaar, the kind of digital platform payment system we have, like UPI, the kind of data exchange platform we are evolving, future look very bright. But as I said, we need to evolve more, we need to evolve new business model, we need to collaborate more, and we need to innovate more. I think these are the way forward, where I foresee there are enough opportunity for all of us for masses at large, for citizen at large. That's how I foresee. Thank you.
Sanjay, your parting thoughts?
Uh, Two thoughts. I mean, one is basically reiteration of the point I said earlier. One is from the policy point of view of bringing in policies for growth without carbonization and operational efficiencies in data center one. And on the day-to-day practical side is, I mean, we know that the compute will not only reside in data centers, the compute is going to go beyond data centers to the edge. And so it's important to build an integrated, an integrated security system across the network, across applications, across workloads, because the vulnerability increases with every device being connected. Vulnerability increases with every extra mile we stretch to. So an integrated security solution across all parameters is absolutely critical.
Interesting. I think on that note, we need to bring this session to a close. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And thank you to our panelists for their insights on this. And with that, I'd like to wrap up this discussion. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Goodbye.
Forbes India and Legrand present Data Driven World.